Title: Unbroken. Synopsis: 17-year-old Eli and 18-year-old Noah are sent to New Light, a remote conversion therapy camp deep in the woods, where counselors use psychological abuse, isolation, and even physical punishment to force LGBTQ+ teens into becoming normal. Both boys come from different backgrounds. Eli, a pastor's son who spent his life hiding, and Noah, a defiant runaway whose conservative parents dragged him back home just to send him here. At first, they're just trying to survive. But when they meet in secret moments, a glance in the cafeteria, a whispered conversation after lights out, something sparks. As their bond deepens, so does the risk. The camp's leader, Pastor Grayson, sees Noah as a troublemaker and is determined to break him. And Eli? He's desperate to prove to his family that he's not broken, even as his heart tells him otherwise. When they uncover the camp's darkest secrets, including the disappearance of a boy who tried to escape before them, Eli and Noah realize they have only one choice: run or die trying. Chapter 1: Arrival. The van rattled down the gravel road, kicking up dust as it wound through the dense forest. Eli sat stiffly in the back seat, his hands clasped in his lap, his fingernails digging into his palms. His mother sat beside him, her lips pressed into a thin line, her Bible clutched tightly in her hands. She hadn't spoken since they left home that morning. She didn't need to. The silence said everything. His father drove, eyes locked straight ahead. A wooden cross dangled from the rearview mirror, swaying gently with every bump in the road. "This is for your own good," his mother finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You know that, don't you?" Eli swallowed hard and nodded. He knew what he was supposed to say, what he was supposed to believe, but his heart pounded against his ribs, his breath shallow and quick. The trees parted, revealing a clearing with a series of low, cabin-like buildings. A wooden sign at the entrance read, "New Light, a path to redemption." A man stood at the front steps, hands clasped behind his back. Pastor Grayson. Eli had never met him, but he knew his type. The kind of man who spoke softly but wielded fear like a weapon. The kind of man his father admired. The van came to a stop. "Welcome, Eli," Pastor Grayson said, smiling as Eli stepped out. "We're going to do great things here." Eli forced himself to nod, but his stomach twisted. The doors of New Light shut behind him, sealing his fate. Chapter 2: Noah. Noah had been at New Light for exactly 3 days, and he already knew one thing. This place was hell. The counselors, if that's what you could call them, divided them into groups. Sessions, they called them. Some were lectures about sin and redemption. Others were prayer circles, where boys were forced to confess their sins. The worst were the one-on-ones. Noah had his first one-on-one the day before, and his bruises still ached. He sat at the edge of his bunk, staring out the barred window, when the new kid arrived. He was quiet, shoulders hunched, eyes scanning the room like a trapped animal. Another lamb led to the slaughter. Noah smirked, leaning back on his bed. "You the new recruit?" The kid startled, turning toward him. Up close, Noah could see the fear in his eyes. "Eli," he mumbled. "Noah," he said. "Welcome to paradise." Chapter 3: The Rules. Eli barely slept his first night at New Light. The mattress was thin, the room stifling, and every creak of the wooden cabin set his nerves on edge. But it wasn't just the discomfort, it was the knowledge that he wasn't leaving. Not until they decided he was cured. At dawn, a bell rang through the camp, and a counselor, Mr. Avery, barged in. Up and out. 5 minutes. Eli and the others scrambled to get dressed. Noah, however, moved at his own pace, stretching before lazily pulling on his shirt. Mr. Avery noticed. "Now, Noah," he snapped. Yeah, Noah muttered, standing up. Eli tensed, expecting the counselor to react, but Mr. Avery only gave Noah a long, warning look before moving on. As they walked to the mess hall, Eli whispered, "Why do you do that? Provoke them?" Noah shot him a sideways glance. "Because someone has to." Breakfast was a silent, joyless affair. Bowls of watery oatmeal. No talking. No eye contact. Just the clink of spoons against bowls. Afterward, Pastor Grayson stood at the front of the room and read from the Bible about how God could cleanse the impure. Then came the rules. "There will be no unsupervised time," he said. "No physical contact. No discussion of your past sins unless in session. And most importantly, no attempts to leave. God has brought you here, and He alone will decide when you are ready to go. Eli swallowed hard. He wanted to believe his parents were right, that this place could help him, but every fiber of his being told him otherwise. Across the table, Noah caught his gaze and held it for just a second too long. Eli looked away, but for the first time, he wondered if maybe he wasn't alone. Chapter 4. The Escape Plan. By the time night fell, Eli had already been through his first prayer session, where he was forced to repeat over and over that he was broken, sinful, wrong. The words stung more than he thought they would. He sat on the edge of his bunk, staring at the floor, when Noah's voice cut through the silence. Eli. Eli glanced up. Noah leaned in close, his voice barely a whisper. You want to get out of here? Eli's breath caught in his throat. What? Noah's expression was serious. This place isn't just about praying away the gay. People disappear. They don't come back. If we don't leave, we're next. Eli hesitated. The fear was real, but so was the weight of his family's expectations. I can't. You can, Noah interrupted. And you have to. You don't owe them your life. For a moment, the world felt too small, the walls of new light closing in around him. But then he saw it, the look in Noah's eyes. Determined. Fierce. Alive. Maybe he wasn't strong enough on his own. But with Noah, maybe he could be. Eli took a shaky breath and nodded. Tell me the plan. Chapter 5. The Unspoken Truth. Eli woke up in the middle of the night again, the constant hum of the overhead lights seeping through the cracks in the window. He had barely slept, and now the shadows of the room pressed in on him like an oppressive weight. His body felt stiff, his thoughts fragmented. He lay on his back, staring at the ceiling, trying not to let his thoughts wander to the painful memories of his parents' faces, the disappointment in his mother's eyes, the stern anger in his father's. They thought they were saving him, and he wanted to believe it. He wanted to believe that if he could just follow the rules, if he could just stop being who he was, it would all make sense. But as each hour passed, the truth clawed its way to the surface, and it felt unbearable. The sound of a soft cough pulled him from his thoughts. Noah sat on the edge of the bed opposite him, his legs crossed under him, eyes wide and alert despite the dark. You okay? Noah's voice was quiet but firm, as though he already knew the answer. Eli didn't answer right away. He wasn't sure how to. He had never talked to anyone like this, not about anything that mattered. But he knew that in the silence, the weight of everything would crush him. Slowly he nodded. Eli started, but the words didn't feel right. He wanted to scream about the endless hours of sessions that only told him he was wrong. He wanted to scream about how every inch of his being screamed for freedom, and yet he couldn't move, couldn't escape. He wanted to scream about his parents, the ones who had sent him here, who had told him this was the only way. Yeah, Noah said, leaning back against the wall. I know the feeling. He let the words settle for a moment, then pushed off from the wall. The hardest part is believing you're the one who's wrong. That's what they want us to think. Eli swallowed, the knot in his throat tightening. But I am wrong. I can't be what I am. It's not right. Noah shook his head, a soft but firm denial. No, Eli, you're not wrong. They are. And that's what makes it so dangerous. Eli's gaze dropped to his hands, his fingers fidgeting nervously. He couldn't wrap his mind around Noah's words. How could anyone think this wasn't his fault? How could anyone think he was anything but broken? But Noah's gaze burned through him, the unspoken truth radiating in his stare. I've seen what this place can do to people, Noah continued, his voice almost a whisper now. People disappear here, Eli, not just physically, but inside. They make you feel like you're worthless, like you'll never be enough. They'll break you until you believe it's your fault, that it's you who needs to change. The truth of Noah's words sunk in deep, and Eli's heart raced in his chest. The room felt smaller, the air heavier. I don't want to lose myself, Eli admitted, his voice shaky. He was terrified. Terrified of what this place might do to him. Terrified of what it might turn him into. You won't, Noah said fiercely. I won't let you. Noah's words were simple, but filled with a promise that resonated in the pit of Eli's stomach. They were trapped in a place designed to destroy them, but maybe, just maybe, there was a way out. Not just physically, but emotionally too. Eli finally looked up, meeting Noah's gaze. For the first time, the fear in his chest felt a little less suffocating. Maybe he wasn't alone. Maybe he didn't have to be broken. I'll help you, Noah said, as though reading his thoughts. We're getting out of here. Together. Chapter 6. Fractured Hearts. The next few days were a blur of torment and brief moments of stolen peace. In the hallways, at meals, in the dreaded sessions, Eli and Noah exchanged glances, small signals of solidarity, though the fear of being caught always loomed overhead. The camp's rules tightened, the pressure to conform increasing with each passing hour. Pastor Grayson's sermons about sin and repentance only grew more aggressive, his voice thunderous as he preached from the pulpit about the need to purge oneself of unnatural desires. His words cut through Eli's soul like jagged knives, each sermon another layer of guilt heaped on him. It wasn't just the sessions. It was the isolation, the relentless repetition of the same rhetoric, the insistence that there was something deeply wrong with who they were. And all the while, Noah's presence beside him was a quiet rebellion. Each moment he spent with Noah, whether it was a shared look across the room or a whispered exchange when no one was looking, filled Eli with something he hadn't felt in a long time: hope. But hope was dangerous in a place like New Light. The day after their conversation, the camp's rules tightened further. Eli and Noah were no longer allowed to speak without supervision, their every movement watched. The counselors grew suspicious of the connection between the two boys, their interactions growing more scrutinized. Pastor Grayson began to single Noah out, accusing him of being a bad influence on the others. That night, after lights out, when the camp settled into an uneasy silence, Noah's voice broke through the darkness again. "We need a plan," he whispered, urgency in his tone. Eli's heart skipped a beat. "I'm listening." Noah's voice dropped even lower. "There's a back gate, hidden behind the trees near the far end of the property. If we can get there without anyone noticing." Eli's chest tightened. "But if they catch us?" "They won't. Not if we're smart. We just have to move fast." Eli's hands trembled as he listened. This was it. This was their chance. He took a deep breath, feeling the weight of everything pressing down on him. His parents' expectations, the years of silence, the fear. But there was something else now, something stronger, the belief that he wasn't alone. Noah was right. They weren't broken. And together, they could escape. "We'll run," Eli said, his voice steady despite the storm brewing inside him. "And we'll make it, no matter what." Noah smiled, his expression fierce and determined. That's the spirit. Chapter 7. The Great Escape. It was the night they had been planning for. The camp was quieter than usual, as most of the counselors had taken the night off for a meeting. This was their chance. Eli and Noah had been careful, sneaking extra rations from the mess hall, memorizing the path to the gate, and preparing for the worst. They knew the risks, knew the punishments if they were caught, but they also knew that staying meant losing themselves forever. With a final glance around to ensure they weren't being watched, they slipped out of the cabin, moving like shadows in the darkness. The silence of the night felt like it was pressing in around them, but with every step, the world outside seemed closer. Freedom, a word they had only whispered in secret, was now within their grasp. The gate loomed in front of them. Eli felt his pulse hammer in his ears. They had made it. Just a little farther. The gate creaked open with a low groan, the sound of metal on metal slicing through the stillness of the night. And then, they were free. But the danger wasn't over. They still had to survive, to escape the reach of New Light and its unyielding grip on their lives. But as Eli and Noah ran into the unknown, they both knew one thing. They were no longer broken. Together, they were unbroken.